Me again. Okay. Theory of Knowledge. Very important book. Okay. Now, Second Coming. Okay. You're going to be into real anthroposophy, you have to get up to speed on the Second Coming. Sorry. It's the big deal of the 20th century, not the Christmas conference that failed. Alright, so, Josiah Ben-Aharon, the spiritual event of the 20th century. This is spiritual research. Next to the book I just showed you, this should be the top book that people read. I'm sorry, just should be. My goodness. Well, we could look at the contents of it. The subtitle is An Imagination, in caps. This is based on Ben-Aharon's experience of through imaginative cognition. The occult significance of the 12 years 1933 to 45 in the light of spiritual science. Spiritual research on the Second Coming, post the Second Coming. Steiner announced it. People afterwards look at it, and if they look at it from an anthroposophical, developed spiritual science, clairvoyant point of view, then you get what Ben-Aharon wrote. How could anything be more important? I'm sorry. Let's do this again. How could anything be more important for launching into the 21st century, real anthroposophy, than to understand the most significant spiritual event of the 20th century? I'll just read you the chapter headings. Anthroposophy is the living language of the present. Interesting set of words. The living language of the present. 2. New soul faculties. Rudolf Steiner's indications. 3. The imagination of the century's event. 4. The rebirth of anthroposophy. Now that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Ben-Aharon wrote this and produced this in the 1990s, and it's pretty much been ignored. The rebirth of anthroposophy suggests that something happened, and anthroposophy needs to be reborn. Chapter 5. Relation between supersensible and physical events in 1933 and 45. Something happens in the spiritual world, and we all know something happened on the earth. We know the history, right? 33 is the beginning of this 12-year period, and that begins with the burning of the Reichstag in Germany and the descent of Central Europe into madness. It ends in 1945 with the exploding of the atomic bomb and the murder of all these people in Japan through the use of a device born out of human beings' arrogant understanding of subnature and the forces of subnature. It's important to understand these things if you're going to be a real anthroposophist. You know? I don't know what else I can say about it. I'm going to try to say a little. Everything that's happening in the present has within it, as the spiritual life spark, the second coming of Christ in the ethereal, the true second coming. Now, one of the ways we know this is how hard the opposing forces worked to mask this event. And how did they do this? Well, in my writings about the incarnation of Ahriman, we will come to this a little bit, but basically, if you look at the past, particularly at what went on in the sort of vain Christian institutional religious impulses in America and elsewhere, we have the usurpation of the idea of the second coming and the popularization of a totally degenerate view of what it means. So if you talk to an ordinary person, a person who prides themselves on their rationality and their ability to be part of the scientific age, which is sometimes a bit hard for some anthroposophists, but if you talk to people like the new atheists and stuff and you mention the second coming, they'll roll their eyes, oh God, some Christian nut job. Now think about that. Think about the fact that in the world there's this attitude about the second coming. Oh God, some Christian nut job. Now that's the result of the activity of the opposing forces. They've been very, very busy while the society's been very, very asleep and incompetent. And that's part of where we start in the 21st century. We have to sort of find a way to move the idea of the second coming into the forefront of things spiritual and religious, against the usurpation of that area of thinking by the opponents who have bastardized it. I can't even think of the words used, They basically managed to influence people through the shadow, which is something I'm going to talk about. You hardly hear anything from Dornoch or the councils in America. Nobody knows anything about the shadow, the double, the doppelganger. But I've done a lot of spiritual research on it, and I have some interesting stuff to say. In fact, you can buy a book about it or read for free on my website. But anyway, we'll get to that. So here we're in the 21st century, and the second coming happened, and we have Ben-Aharon's wonderful book about it, and then we have what the opponents have succeeded in doing, which is so mess up the situation that if you say the word second coming, and I actually had this happen to me. I'd gone to a conference in Portland with an anthroposophical friend, and although I wasn't supposed to lecture there, it was arranged that I could give a small talk, and as I was talking about the second coming, I was interrupted by some anthroposophists, and they explained to me what a problem this was to talk about it, because people had this bias toward us and thought you were a fundamentalist Christian if you talked about the second coming. So you can understand in a way why Dornoch and councils in America don't talk about it very much, because they're afraid. Well, in real anthroposophy, we don't get afraid. We might even get a little pissed off and say, this is not right, this is not the good. I'm not doing the good if I be afraid to talk about the second coming, the spiritual event of the 20th century. And of course, it's a sign of the effect of the opponents in the Anthroposophical Society that instead of talking about the second coming, we talk about something that failed, the Christmas conference. Think about it. I'm going to have more to say later.